left to right. Russell Westbrook.
You love the Philadelphia Eagles. Let me get a hell yeah!
What is up, everybody? Welcome to Party on Broad. It is Deibs, Mr. Crockpot on Twitter. On tap for today, we have a new show, a brand new show for you today. It is kind of our weekend review of Philly sports. Joining me today, I have Brock Landis. Make sure you check him out on Twitter at LandisBrock. What's up, Brock?
Chris, thank you for having me. I've missed you and everybody else with the painted lines on Party on Broad and PTI and everything of that sort. So I'm happy to be back. And I'm excited going forward. I'm glad to chat with you. So I'm very excited going forward.
Yeah, man, this is going to be, we typically do reaction videos and we kind of break down, different things with the Sixers and the Eagles. But I thought it would be really fun to do a, pardon the interruption hybrid, but with Philly sports. So we are going to kind of wing this and see what happens. Let's start off with Monday. The big news of the day was the Phillies officially invited Spencer Howard and Alec Bohm to spring training. Spencer Howard, in my opinion, is absolutely the team's top prospect. He's got a power fastball. He averaged 12 strikeouts per 9 innings in his minor league career. And then you have Alec Bohm, who was the number 3 prospect in the draft 2 years ago. Any reaction to that, man?
Yeah, absolutely. You part ways with Sixto Sanchez, and Medina has struggled greatly with command, and those were your 2 top pitching prospects. And over the course of the last season, Spencer Howard has really emerged as the Phillies' top prospect. I'd even argue with you, he is their most important prospect right now because of the desperation Philadelphia has in their bullpen and with their starters. They definitely need more depth there, and Spencer Howard can offer that. His ERA was 2.05 around the season prior, and he's the type of pitcher that's going to throw for strikeouts, and he doesn't walk a lot of guys. He makes a lot of opposing batters swing and miss, so I really like Howard, but Bohm I'm very excited about. And I do believe that there's a reason why Philadelphia didn't pursue Mike Moustakas heavily. They stayed out of the Nolan Arenado sweepstakes as per trade, or as via trade, my apologies. They didn't really heavily pursue Anthony Rendon, who is a friend of Bryce Harper's, and they could have gone into the luxury and pursued him. Josh Donaldson, they also let pass. So I do think Philadelphia foresees a very bright future in Bohm, and he offers power. He's definitely a staple at the hot corner. He's got great range there. He offers a lot of power. He drove in over 80 runs batted in, but the interesting thing is his strikeout rate. It's very low. Mike Trout's strikeout rate in the minor leagues was 14.1%. Bohm is far below that, so I'm very excited to see what he can offer.
Yeah, man. Spencer Howard, he's 23 years old. Both these guys, they will probably most likely start in AAA next season. That's not up to me, though. I would absolutely get these guys to the bigs as soon as possible. Spencer Howard had one of my favorite moments of 2019. It was during the AA playoff game versus Trenton, and he just mowed down 12 batters in 7 innings. He only gave up 4 base runners in that game. And this was during a time when the Phillies bullpen was absolutely horrific. And then you look at Alec Bohm. This guy is just a stud offensively. I guess the biggest question is, what position is he going to play? Will it be third base? Will it be first base? What to do with Rhys Hoskins? There's a lot of question marks, but regardless, the Phillies' offensive depth was a major weakness for the team last year. So they need his bat, man, right?
They definitely do, and I know Philadelphia, after DFAing Odubel Herrera, is pursuing a platoon center fielder with potentially a right-handed bat. I'm not sure that I would go in that direction. For Philadelphia's organization, like I alluded to, I think their top priority is pitching, but you said it, Spencer Howard, he's an elusive pitcher. He makes batters swing and miss. He's got a very overpowering fastball, good off-speed to bounce back on. And for a guy like Spencer Howard, I think he could be a fringe starter in 2020. I think towards the end of the season, if Philadelphia is making a playoff run, which I assume they are, I also did last season. We know how that ended. But I think Spencer Howard can really help. And I've seen on Twitter there's been hype for Nick Pivetta because he's tweaked his mechanics and he's been training with Noah Syndergaard and this and that. We dealt with that last season. I'm not looking forward to seeing Pivetta pitch. I'm looking forward to seeing Spencer Howard. He's a young buck. He'll be a breath of fresh air from Philadelphia. So, yeah, hopes are high here.
Definitely. I'm not going to lie. I was one who drank the Pivetta juice last season before the season started.
We all did. We all fell for it. And I presumably we all will again when he goes out and tosses a gem for his first 1 or 2 starts. But it's the same cycle every year. It's becoming maddening.
Absolutely. Let's move on. On Tuesday, it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was announced that Odubel Herrera was designated for assignment. Herrera was involved in that domestic abuse in New Jersey last May. He served an 85-game suspension for violating the MLB's policy against domestic violence. There's no one in baseball, at least me personally, that defines inconsistency more than Odubel Herrera. What was your reaction to that, man?
I mean, at a certain point, talent doesn't trump what he did.
Yes.
And there's a reason why no other team in the Major League Baseball Association claimed him, and there's a reason why Philadelphia DFA'd him. I agree. He's been very inconsistent, and he's been a locker room distraction. There's been talks about him not hustling or in the locker room not getting along with teammates. So when you compound those problems with the problems he's created for himself in his personal life, that just outweighs any talent he offers. So I don't foresee him ever taking a pitch again as a Philadelphia Philly.
Period. And this is a guy that was just such a headache on the field as well, man. This guy had stretches of legit months where he couldn't hit over 200. He couldn't get on base to save his life. Good riddance, man.
And then, I mean, and of course, the guy would hit like 367 and lead all National League outfielders for a month and look great defensively. And then the next month, he's not running out balls hit. You can't afford to keep a guy like that in the roster when you're creating a new culture.
Man, inconsistency with the Phillies, man. That is the absolute trend. On Wednesday, let's move forward. On Wednesday, let's start out with the amazing news. The Flyers beat the St. Louis Blues behind a Jacob Voracek goal in overtime. The St. Louis Blues were on a 9-game home winning streak at the time. The Flyers lost to the Canadiens last night. By the way, we're recording on Friday. But the Flyers' 4 previous games were against the league's best. You had the Caps, you had the Lightning, you had the Bruins, and the Blues. The Flyers won 3 of 4. What was your reaction to that, man?
Yeah, 3-5-1 in their last 9. They beat St. Louis, who defending Stanley Cup champion. And if the season were to end right now, the Flyers are in the playoff picture. I believe they'd have the 8th seed. So it's a very good win. And similar to the Phillies, the Flyers are establishing a new culture, new identity, new management. Everything's different with who's running the organization, the players in the locker room. So it's a very encouraging win. But unfortunately, I'm going to foreshadow a little bit. We have some other Philadelphia Flyer news to talk to, which is a little upsetting. But Chris, I'll let you take the floor back.
Absolutely. Then we get to the bad news. Carter Hart is out 2 to 3 weeks with a lower right abdominal strain. What was your reaction to that, man?
It's a tough pill to swallow, but luckily he may only miss 4 to 6 games due to the approaching bye week and the All-Star game. But Carter Hart's a guy who's really he's played his best hockey this season with Philadelphia. I mean, he's 13-2-2 at home. He has the most home wins of any Eastern Conference netminder and the second most home wins of any NHL goaltender. He leads all goalies with at least 5 starts in save percentage and goals against average. So you can really talk about how good Carter Hart is for hours on end. So it's a tough loss, but like I said, if it's only 4 to 6 games, you're really okay with that. And he's 21 years old, so he's got plenty of time to recover.
Yeah, and he's had inconsistent, signs of inconsistency, just like every other Phillies player, any player in Phillies sports. But, this is a young goalie. You expect these things, but missing time on the ice, that's not good, man. We need him. He is a vital part of the Flyers playoff push. And they got some young blood, man. That's going to be a really fun, energetic young team to watch if and when they make the playoffs. Then we move on to Mr. Toby Buckets, Tobias Harris dominating in the fourth quarter and the Sixers taking down the Brooklyn Nets. That was just an incredible performance, especially in that second half. What was your main takeaways from that W?
I think Tobias Harris was worth that $180 million contract. And I say that because you compare him to other players making a similar amount of money, and Tobias Harris has been just as efficient. I'm not going to blow anybody with stats and do any of that nonsense, but I will say his numbers are comparable to Chris Middleton and Jason Tatum. And in the fourth quarter of this season, Tobias Harris has a 110.4 offensive rating, the highest of any quarter, and a 60.7% true shooting percentage in the fourth quarter, the highest of any quarter. So he has most definitely been the go-to guy for Philadelphia. And if he continues to be aggressive, I don't see how these numbers are going to change. I mean, 3 straight possessions he was given the ball and attacked for Philadelphia and basically changed the outcome of that game for the Sixers. I think it's huge to have a guy like that, not only on the floor, but in the locker room as well. He's been noted as the locker room leader for Philadelphia, so I think he was completely worth that contract.
With Joel Embiid out, the Sixers desperately needed, an offensive punch. And then you had enter Tobias Harris, who willed the Sixers to victory versus the Nets. Dude, he scored 24 of his 34 points in that second half. 9 of the 14 points in that 14-2 Sixers run to end the game were Tobias Harris. What do you expect from Tobias Harris moving forward? Is this the Tobias Harris we're going to see, or is it just gonna rotate between Jay Rich and Tobias Harris until I guess Joel Embiid comes back?
I'm not really sure because this did happen a season prior in the playoffs. Tobias Harris was completely absent for a few games, and then he did have a huge explosion game against Brooklyn. For me, at least, I think Tobias Harris needs to be utilized a little differently. He's less of a catch and shooter and more of a pick and roll player. Mm-hmm. So I think if the Sixers utilize him in a pick and pop or a pick and roll situation, that would open things up. But like I said, the dude has a 110.4 offensive rating in the fourth quarter this season, highest of any quarter he's played in. He's one of the league leaders in points per game in the fourth quarter, and he's just been wildly efficient in that quarter. So if he continues to get the basketball at the volume he's getting it, I don't see anything changing. The ball is definitely going to rotate, and the Sixers do have problems trying to integrate each player. Also, it depends on the shooter they acquire at the deadline. But I think if you can space the floor a little bit more, get another shooter or two, the game and the floor can be opened up more for Tobias, which can only help his production.
Absolutely agree. Also happening on Wednesday, it was announced that Harold Carmichael is heading to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Unfortunately, I'm too young to have been able to appreciate his talent. But dude, this guy was taken in the 7th round of the 1971 NFL Draft. Brock, I got to ask you a question, man. Now, I know the NFL Draft is just a completely different animal than it was back in 1971. It's not the media giant it is today. But could you imagine today a 6'8" wide receiver like Harold Carmichael taken in the 7th round? Go ahead.
I mean, I'm just watching Carmichael's highlights, and it's incredible. I didn't know he was 6'8". So when you said that, it was just mind-blowing. I'm watching him, and he's taller than every corner. He jumps higher than everybody, and he's the type of receiver that probably pioneered throw the football anywhere in his direction, and he'll catch it. Now you see a guy like DK Metcalf, Justin Blackmon, Julio Jones, guys with huge statures at the wide receiver position, and they're taken 1 through 3, 1 through 4, because they may not have the talent, but they have the size. So you can teach them how to run routes, how to catch footballs in traffic. Excuse me. And he probably pioneered this. 6'8", he's the all-time leader for Philadelphia in receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns. Much deserved, and he was truly a freak of nature. Worked his tail off, too, of course.
Awesome, man. He played 13 seasons for the Birds. He caught more passes, more yards, and scored more touchdowns than any other receiver in Eagles history, man. When he retired, dude, he ranked among the top 10 receivers in NFL history. He held 11 Eagles records and played a streak of 127 consecutive games. Could you imagine what a receiver like that could look like on the Eagles right now, man? We are desperate for a wide receiver. And you look at those stats. Man, can he still play?
It's truly incredible how the game has changed. What'd you say, 127 consecutive games?
Yeah, man.
And you have to imagine the training they had and the access to travel. Like everything was different back then. This likely wasn't a primary job for a lot of people. They may have held other jobs or worked secondary jobs, but the training they had was inadequate compared to today. They didn't have first-class jets. They didn't have buses, coach buses take them everywhere. Top-notch diets, top-notch training. So that the fact that he played 120-plus consecutive games is just a testament to how hard he worked. And a 7th-round pick being as good as he was, I mean, you can't teach that. You're just born with that work ethic.
It's incredible, man. Let's move on to a personal favorite of mine. It is Mr. Norvel Pelle. It was announced on Wednesday that his two-way contract will not be converted yet. We don't know yet. For future cap flexibility, the Sixers are still open to converting that deal, but they're kind of weighing options and keeping flexibility for the upcoming NBA trade deadline. What was your reaction to that, man?
I was sad, and we all were here at the Painted Lines. I mean, Pelle's our guy. He's fun to watch. He's great on the bench. He's great in the locker room. He's just always energetic. He's got very good charisma. But I think this is a business decision. And I think Philadelphia potentially thinks that Kyle O'Quinn is more important in terms of trading than Pelle. And after the deadline or after this season, I'm not sure what they're going to do with Pelle, but like I said, we're all sat here at the Painted Lines. I really like him as an energizer. He's a spark plug. I mean, it seems like every game he's in, he's blocking at least 2 shots. So he's the type of guy that on offense, you can't pair him with Ben Simmons, but regardless, he's an energizer, and he plays very hard when he's on the court.
I fully agree, man. The last 2 years, I've covered him in Delaware, in Wilmington, Delaware, with the Blue Coats. Dude is just a lightning rod of personality. I don't know if you saw, like, on Twitter, like, he's dancing and stuff, you know, during the pregame shoot around. He's just such a fun player, a funny player, a guy that always, you know, in any room you notice him because he's got just a smile this big. But dude,
he's also 7 feet. That helps too.
But it's just one of those guys that I really hope sticks with the Sixers, man. I look at the Sixers, and I look at their pick and roll defense. It is absolutely horrendous. I know Norvel Pelle has a little Jonah Bolden in him. He makes dumb mistakes on the court. He makes dumb fouls. He's not always in the best spot for him. But man, when Joel Embiid comes off that court, it is just horrendous in terms of just, you know, defense in the paint. I really hope they keep him. Next, we got Matisse Thybulle returning to form. He got his first start with the Sixers on Wednesday night. He played 27 minutes, just flashed excellent defense. What was your reaction to Matisse Thybulle, man?
When Matisse Thybulle plays over 20 minutes, the Sixers win. It's that simple. The guy is so alert defensively at such a young age. It's so rare. He's always alert in the floor. He's filling passing lanes. He's always moving. And my favorite thing about Thybulle defensively is that he goes over screens. He hedges screen. He doesn't just go. I mean, I know the Sixers, they like to switch a lot on screens as they go under, but Matisse Thybulle, one of his biggest tools defensively is his toughness, and he uses that to go over hedge screens, and that's huge when your pick and roll defense support the guard position. So Matisse Thybulle, he's been very impressive. Of course, there's a slight offensive regression because he was shooting over 60% from beyond the arc at home, but if he's good for banging a couple of shots here and there and playing stout defense, I think he's very serviceable. And in my opinion, he should be starting. I think Al Horford should be relegated to a bench role, potentially a 6th man as a primary center and secondary power forward, which would open up a spot for Matisse Thybulle, and I think he can handle that. You probably do as well because your name here is Matisse the Beast, so I'll let you speak your piece on him.
Dude, I mean, yes, I fully agree with everything you just said. The dude needs to start. He's shooting nearly 42% from 3 on the season. He's averaging only 18 minutes a game, but I have no doubt in my head that you're going to see that steadily increase all the way through April. I just love, like everything you said, I just love his energy on defense, his ability to deflect passes, you know, block shots, which allows, honestly, Tobias and Jay Rich to really focus on their offense, which is something that is drastically needed right now because who knows when Joel Embiid comes back. Do you see Matisse Thybulle starting more and more as the season progresses, man?
I mean, if Brett Brown is coaching, who knows? Because Howard and Alec could be starting in place of Ben Simmons tomorrow with Brett Brown at the helm. But for me, at least, I completely agree with everything you said. And I think he should be starting. I don't think that's up for debate. The guy is just so good defensively, and his teammates have so much trust in him. You can see when they're on the floor, they allow themselves to be left on an island when Matisse Thybulle is playing at top of the key. And he's a guy that's so quick and he closes out so well. I mean, there's plays where he's at least 5 feet away from his defender, and he gets a hand in the shot. He closes out so well. And when you watch a guy, he's so good defensively, it's so tough to just waste him on the bench. I think, Chris, you're exactly right. He should be starting, but will he? if Brett Brown is the head coach, I can't give you that answer. I doubt it as of right now.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. For me personally, it boils down to the Sixers are best when they're getting buckets in transition. There are times when this offense gets so stale, no one's moving, no one's doing any backdoor cuts. And, with at least Matisse in there, you're getting deflections, you're getting steals, you're getting transition points. That's the guy I go with. I fully agree over Al Horford. And then we move on to a little bit about the NBA trade deadline, because on Thursday, we heard from The Athletic that the Sixers, among with the Rockets and the Dallas Mavericks, have expressed in trading for Robert Rocco Covington. What was your reaction to that, man?
I can't say I'm surprised. I can potentially see a reunion in Philadelphia, but I'm not sure if this is the guy that Philadelphia should most heavily pursue. On Twitter, as of late, people have made note that Robert Covington's three-point percentage is just either above or below Mike Scott's. And Mike Scott is a guy that everybody is criticizing right now because of how poor he's been shooting. Defensively, Covington gives you a lot. But on offense, I don't really think he helps out. And I don't think it's useful to burn all of your assets on a guy like Covington, who would be presumably just a rental. Chris, you just said it. There's not a lot of backdoor cutting. There's not a lot of off-ball movement. And the thing with Robert Covington is, especially when he was in Philadelphia, he was primarily a catch-and-shoot player.
Yep.
He didn't move. He didn't dribble. He didn't create his shot. He was catch and shoot. And that's the problem with Philadelphia right now, three-point shooting-wise.
Yep.
They have a lot of catch-and-shooters, but they don't have players that can move, create shots and windows to get shots off, and shoot it with accuracy from deep. So a guy like Bertans, not J.J. Redick, but a guy like Bertans, Marcus Morris, Tony Snell, these are all guys I'd prefer over Robert Covington, even Malik Beasley, Alec Burks, which you'd probably have to use less resources for.
You're 100% right. I went into a full depression when Robert Covington was traded away from the Sixers. I remember I was at a bar, actually. It was fitting. And I was with some friends, and man, that was a long night because my heart would love Robert Covington in return, but my head, just like you, man, it says it's not the best fit. Of course, he offers a lot of defensive versatility. Him playing like the power stretch four, along with Matisse, Ben, Jay Rich, Toby, that has serious potential on defense. But that's not the Sixers' problem right now. The Sixers' problem right now is playmaking. It's a lack of score. They need a guy off the bench that can get buckets. And that doesn't really solve the Sixers' issues. I would love to see Rocco return. But I don't think it's in the cards right now. And lastly, we have the Eagles' search for an offensive coordinator continues. Right now, it seems to be everything aligning towards Jim Caldwell and Duce Staley. What's your take on that, man?
I want Caldwell here. I don't know why you'd promote Duce Staley to offensive coordinator. Chris, you and I were talking before the show, and you said that it would be a good hometown, a good feel story for Duce to be promoted. But I have despised his running back rotations in the previous 2 seasons. And he's a running back coach. He was a running back. That's what he played. And Doug Peterson, he wants to throw the football 55 times a game. I don't know how the two would coexist if Duce was an offensive coordinator, but Caldwell is a guy who's got great merit. He is one of the Lions' greatest coaches of all time. He's respected league-wide, 64 years old, but he's offensively minded, and he's worked with quarterbacks Matt Stafford and Peyton Manning. So I think he has a lot of merit, and that'd be useful for this Philadelphia staff that just had Mike Groh as an offensive coordinator who had probably the thinnest resume of any offensive coordinator in the NFL.
I fully agree, man. I'm right there. My heart would love to see Duce Staley become the offensive coordinator. Dude, he's the Eagles' great, all-time great. But then I don't know if he's the best offensive coordinator. That's up to Howie and all those guys to make that decision. But yeah, for me, it's got to be Jim Caldwell. I need the brightest mind possible right next to Doug Peterson. That's what's most important. And we need, all the best minds to kind of center around Doug Peterson. That's when Doug is at his best. And then you have Duce Staley. I mean, he's 44 years old. Howie did say the team wants to get younger. Could that be a little nod to maybe Duce Staley? No, All right. Any last comments, man, before we wrap this first show
Chris, I mean, this has nothing to do with Philadelphia sports. It's just got to do with Major League Baseball. I was just curious to know your opinion on everything that's been going on with Houston and the Dodgers and the Mets and all of this cheating. What do you think about it?
I could care less, man.
You can care less?
My personal take is everyone does it. Everyone in all sports, doesn't matter, baseball, football, basketball, everyone does it. Everyone looks for an edge. Everyone tries to find an advantage over anyone. It's just a matter of do you get caught or not. And then unfortunately, Houston and unfortunately Boston, they're kind of like at the center stage there. But it doesn't bother me one bit. If I was a Boston fan, I could care less.
It's only cheating if you get caught.
Exactly.
I mean, I can't say I wouldn't want Philadelphia to do something cool like that, have buzzers and but at the same time, it's not all fun and games when you might get your World Series rings revoked and then you're taken off the history books and you lose your job. Now you're on the unemployment line. I don't know. I'm glad we don't have to deal with all of that drama in Philadelphia right now because we deal with enough here. Yeah,
it's like dealing with a great player. Would you like him on your team? Of course you would. It's just one of those things where if I was Philadelphia and we just got caught cheating, I'd be like, tough beans.
Whatever. I mean, it's crazy because I changed my mind so much. I'm a Ben Simmons apologist, but I changed my mind like the weather.
Yeah.
So I'll walk in and I'll have a debate with somebody about why Ben Simmons is such a great player and this and that. And they agree, and then somewhere you go, you talk about why Ben Simmons is this and that, and then they'll say, well, he's not a threat from 12 feet out. I can't defend that anymore.
Yeah.
I used to try and talk about what he did in transition. I can't defend that anymore. And that's just life as a Philadelphia fan. You have to defend Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid or Bryce Harper and then Alshon Jeffrey. I don't know if it's just Philadelphia, but we got to deal with a lot of nonsense here in this city.
There is no more divisive fan base than Philadelphia. I mean, you didn't even bring up Carson versus Nick Foles. And that,
oh my God.
All right, let's wrap this up. Make sure you check out Brock Landis on Twitter at LandisBrock. I'm Deibs, Mr. Crockpot on Twitter. Make sure you check out, every week we're going to do this show where we recap the top news in Philly sports. For Brock, for myself, thanks for watching, guys. Stay awesome.
Sixers win it! Wow! Oh man, Embiid just posterized Russell Westbrook.
You love the Philadelphia Eagles!